everyone, I'm Sarah and this is Budgetsew, where we create stylish, fashionable looks as inexpensively as possible. Today, I'm going to show you how to sew a custom fitted sewing machine cover. Just a quick note before we get started, today I'm wearing a dress that I upcycled. The link to the video where I show you how to upcycle your own dress by lengthening it is right here at the top of the screen. In the past year, I've acquired a serger and a new sewing machine. My serger didn't come with a cover and my sewing machine came with a giant plastic case that sits over the machine but has a hole in the top as a handle. I wanted to make some pretty sewing machine covers to keep the dust off my machines so they keep running for many years to come.
My first step was to trace the shape of my sewing machine for the side pieces of my sewing machine cover. Sew Very Easy recommended using a piece of cardboard that could stand up or lean against a wall for your template. I ordered a TV table from Amazon and it came in this giant cardboard box. It was perfect to trace my sewing machine. I placed the largest of the sides of my sewing machine up against the cardboard and I traced the shape. If you want to store your machine fully threaded with a spool on top, remember to have the spool on the machine when tracing. This will make the sewing machine cover a bit taller. This sewing machine is my brand new Singer Fashionmate 5560 that I bought from Canadian Tire at a super low price. Please stay tuned to Budgetsew for my unboxing video. Next, I placed the largest side of my serger up against the cardboard to be traced. Please note that it's either side of the machine, but not the front or the back. This is my Singer S0100 serger that I absolutely adore. I was a bit hesitant to buy a serger, but I got it on sale at Canadian Tire as well. I use it all the time to finish my seams. It's so much easier than pinking, and I like the look better than zigzagging. If you would like to know more about my Singer S0100 serger, check out my video. The link is at the top of the screen. Next, I cleaned up my tracing lines with a Sharpie and a ruler. Remember to curve your corners to make it easier to sew. You can see here that I drew straight lines and then added curves, but I should have made the curves larger. For the serger, I followed the same process, but I should have drawn a large curve where the straight line met the rounded line. Then I added my seam allowances. I marked 5/8 of an inch all the way around my template. You can use any seam allowance you wish. I always use 5/8 of an inch, but 1/2 an inch would work too. When the TV table was delivered from Amazon, I knew right away what I was going to use the cardboard box for. Brad wanted to cut it down to be recycled, but I grabbed it right away and said I needed it for a sewing project. Then I did the same thing for my serger template. I marked 5/8 of an inch all the way around my template. Some people can add seam allowances when they're cutting out their fabric, but I always add it to my patterns or templates. I know that I would forget to add it and be disappointed that I cut out my project too small. I'd probably find a way around it though. Maybe make the seam allowances smaller or add inserts. Then it was time to cut out my templates. I made a bit of a mistake here because I didn't add the hem to my template. Later you'll see that I added some cardboard to the bottom of my templates so that there would be a nice hem at the bottom of my sewing machine covers. I borrowed Brad's utility knives because I couldn't find mine. I bought a complete toolkit when I was in college, and I still have all my tools, but I think Brad must have borrowed my utility knife at some point because it wasn't in my toolbox. Mine is yellow with decorative tape. I chose to use a Craftsman blade on this project. Then I used my craft scissors to clean up the edges. Remember to round the corners to make sewing the covers easier. I took a chunk off the corner here. My next step was to measure the sewing machine for the piece that covers the back, top, and front. I started with my serger first and measured the width. I went with the widest part of the machine, which was 15 inches. Then I measured around the edge of my template on 3 sides. You can see here that I used masking tape to add a piece of cardboard for the hem. The total measurement around the template, not including the base, was 45 inches. This means that I will need a rectangle of fabric 45 inches long by 15 inches wide. Then I did the same with my sewing machine. I added the extension table so that I didn't have to remove it when I was done sewing to add the cover. This is completely up to you. If you have a table but never use it and don't want to include it in your cover, then measure from the widest part of your sewing machine without it. I measured from the edge of the extension table to the other side of the machine for a total of 22 inches. Then I measured around the 3 sides of the template, not including the base, for a total of 42 inches. Using these measurements, I will cut a rectangle of fabric measuring 42 inches long by 22 inches wide. The edge of the fabric wasn't quite square, so I straightened it up before marking the fabric. I used this gorgeous gold fabric that my mom gave to me. It's the same fabric that she used to recover the dining room chairs in her house. So it really makes me smile that we both have this fabric in our homes. Plus, this fabric matches the gold fabrics that I have in my living room. After I had marked the size of my fabric, I used a level ruler that Brad's dad gave to him to mark the size with my tailor's chalk. I lined up the ruler with all my little marks and joined them together in a straight line. Only one rectangle of this size is required, so be careful just to cut one. My fabric is folded in half, but I'm cutting through the top layer only. After I had cut out the first rectangle, I cut out the second rectangle, 45 inches long by 15 inches wide. Next, I refolded my fabric so that I could cut out 2 of each of my templates. This worked perfectly for my sewing machine template, so I traced it with my tailor's chalk. Then I cut them out. I love my Singer fabric scissors so much. They're wonderful. I love them so much that I bought a pair for my mom for her birthday. I did a review of these scissors on Budgetsew, so check out the link at the top of the screen. Then I opened up the fabric for my serger template. This template was much larger than the other one, so it wouldn't have fit if I had kept the fabric folded. I like to make use of every inch of fabric, so I cut out the 2 serger pieces, one at a time. I placed my serger template onto the fabric and traced the outline with my white tailor's chalk. Then I cut it out. After that, I cut out a second piece from the edge of the fabric. This left plenty of fabric for my mom's sewing projects. Then I pinned the sides of the sewing machine cover to the large rectangle of fabric, right sides together. To sew my covers, I used a Schmetz universal needle size 75 or 11. I bought a bunch of these needles from Amazon.ca, and I'm thrilled with them. I chose to use beige Tailor brand thread that I bought for 49 cents from Fabricland online. The thread is 100% polyester and 150 meters or 164 yards long. The link to the video where I purchased this thread is at the top of the screen. I've discovered that I use beige thread in my sewing a lot more than I thought. I thought I just sewed with blue or navy blue, but I make pillows, curtains, appliques, and so much more with beige thread. I need to stock up again. The sides of the covers should be sewn from the bottom of one side to the other using your designated seam allowance. At the sewing machine, I sewed the sides of the sewing machine cover to the front, top, and back piece. I sewed these seams on my domestic sewing machine. Brad bought this sewing machine for me from Marketplace for $40, and it looked like it had never been used. Even the felt for the spool holders was brand new. It's an all-metal machine, except the reverse button and the thread tension knob are plastic. When I received it, it needed to be oiled because the stitch length was stuck to the smallest stitch, but once I worked the oil through, it worked beautifully. I'm still looking for a user manual for my domestic, but I haven't found it yet. I like to have a paper copy of the manual close by so I can refer to it if I ever run into a problem. I prefer to fix the machine myself if I can. Then I pinned up the hems on the covers. I folded the fabric and placed a pin and continue to do this around the cover. When I cut out my cardboard templates and then added another piece to the hem, I was worried that my machine covers might be too short, so I added a bit of extra length to the hem. I didn't need to though. These hems were a bit long, but I liked that the extra fabric added a bit of structure to the bottom of the covers. I forgot to press my seams open before pinning, so I had to make the seams lay flat to pin. I recommend pressing the seams first to make hemming easier and quicker. Then I folded under the fabric, completely encasing the raw edge of the hem. I placed my pins in vertically this time so that they would not interfere when stitching on my sewing machine. I've noticed that my pins seem to not go through the fabric quite as smoothly as they used to. I've been throwing out those pins as I go, but I think when I'm done with all my current sewing projects that I'm going to toss the lot of them and start with my new set of pins that I bought from Amazon.ca. The link to the video with my new pins is at the top of the screen. The pins that I'm using are more than 15 years old, and I bought them at Dollarama, a Canadian dollar store, so I think it's time that they be retired since pins can become dull over time. At my Kenmore sewing machine, I used a blind hem stitch to sew the hems. I haven't done a blind hem stitch on my domestic, and I'm not even sure if the machine can do it since I don't have the manual, but I relied on my trusty Kenmore to do the job. I've done hundreds of hems on the Kenmore. One Christmas a few years ago, my mom made custom-fitted sewing machine covers for my Kenmore and domestic machines, and I love them. She chose a beautiful fabric that matches my living room, and when I see the covers, I smile at her thoughtful gift. At first, I didn't realize that she'd made sewing machine covers for me because she had wrapped a book and a chocolate bar in them and tied them with ribbon. I thought that they were new Christmas gift bags until my mom said, "Do you know what those are?" My mom has the same Kenmore sewing machine as me and used hers as a template for the cases. I inherited my Kenmore from my Nana, and she found hers at a yard sale in Clinton. She also got a vintage Chatty Cathy at the sale. My final step was to press the hems. Here are the finished covers.
enjoyed making sewing machine covers with me. Thanks for watching. See you next time.